Boston's serial rape suspect Matthew Nilo has pleaded not guilty to fresh charges involving the sexual assault of 4 more women 15 years ago, as his lawyer accused the government of pinning unsolved cases on his client. Nilo, now a New Jersey lawyer, was arraigned on Thursday on 7 new charges relating to attacks on women in Boston's historic North End neighborhood between 2007 and 2008. The 35-year-old's new charges include 1 count of both rape and aggravated rape, 3 counts of assault to rape, and 2 counts of indecent assault and battery, according to legal filings. Nilo, who was supported in court by his fiancée Laura Griffin, was previously charged with a string of incidents involving 4 different women in the city's affluent Charlestown neighborhood, to which he has also pleaded not guilty. A clerk magistrate on Thursday set his bail at $50,000 cash, which his lawyer said his client planned to post immediately. Nilo's attorney Joseph Cataldo lashed out at the new charges after the arraignment. They have not turned over any discovery from the new allegations, no police reports, he said, according to Fox News. I think they're trying to solve some unresolved cases, and I think the government might be piling on, just trying to claim that Mr. Nilo committed these crimes. The assaults happened in January 2007, July 2007, January 2008, and July 2008, prosecutors said. Nilo pleaded not guilty to the charges over the incidents involving the first 4 women, and was released from Boston jail after his fiancée posted $500,000 of his $5 million bail and he was fitted with a GPS ankle monitor. He was about 19 to 20 years old at the time of the attacks and was working as a cyber claims lawyer with the Cowbell insurance firm at the time of his arrest earlier this year. Nilo's employment was suspended pending the ongoing investigation. Suffolk District Attorney Kevin R. Hayden told reporters Thursday that the new allegations against Nilo follow a similar pattern to the Charlestown attacks. One of the victims was even attacked twice in just 11 days, Hayden said. The attacks occurred during a time when Matthew Nilo lived in the North End and coincide with the period of time of the attacks on other women in Charlestown, for which Mr. Nilo was previously arraigned. The prosecutor said he hoped advancements in DNA technology would provide the evidence needed to convict Nilo. Nothing can eliminate the terror experienced by these survivors, Hayden said. But at least now they have the knowledge that Mr. Nilo must answer the horrible crimes he's alleged to have committed. We hope this provides some solace to survivors of these attacks. When asked why action had not been taken to ensure Nilo was not released on bail, the prosecutor suggested because the incidents were 15 years ago, he is not still thought to be a threat to society. The next hearing in the case is scheduled for September 14th. Cataldo last month said in a statement, "You can expect both a legal and factual challenge to the government's case." Prosecutors allege that Nilo, a Boston native, attacked 4 women in the North End in 2007 and 2008, including 2 attacks on the same woman just 11 days apart. One attack on January 14, 2008 occurred during the middle of a snowstorm, WCVB reports, while another took place on July 4, 2008. The string of assaults left the neighborhood on edge at the time, as police warned women to be vigilant and even wear rape whistles. Authorities believed the rapes were connected, and released a composite sketch of the suspect. The newly indicted attacks occurred at the time Nilo was living in the North End and during the same period as the attacks against women in Charlestown, for which Nilo is already charged, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office said in a statement announcing the new charges. The incidents followed a similar pattern. The victims were attacked while they were walking alone, in the dark, either at night or early in the morning. Police arrested Nilo on May 30 in an FBI sting in which he was lured out of the luxury Harborside apartment he shared with his fiancée, Laura Griffin, with the claim that a package had been delivered that was too big to fit in the swanky facility's lockers. Law enforcement claims to have linked Nilo to the 4 assaults in Charlestown with DNA evidence identified through the genealogy database 23andMe, to which family members had voluntarily submitted samples. The Sexual Assault Kit Initiative, a federal program designed to help process a backlog of rape kits, was used in the investigation after Boston Police Department reached out last October. By April, Nilo had been identified as a suspect according to FBI Special Agent Joseph R. Bonavolanta. He then waived his extradition back to Massachusetts and was charged in the Charlestown rapes, in which, prosecutors say, Nilo picked up women downtown and brought them to Terminal Street, where he would assault them. Nilo's first alleged victim, Lori Pinkham, shared her ordeal. Pinkham admitted that she had lost hope that her attacker would ever be caught and said she was in disbelief and awe when police came to her home and told her they had identified him.
"He's a very evil person and he used weapons and force to violently kidnap and rape multiple women," she said.
Pinkham could not get into the details of her own assault, she said, but is prepared to testify against Nilo if called to by prosecutors. Meanwhile, Nilo's attorney says he intends to challenge the constitutionality of the evidence collected by police and federal authorities used to arrest him.
Nilo was released from a Boston jail on June 15 after Griffin paid $500,000 towards his bail.
He was fitted for a GPS tracker and was released on the condition he surrender his passport, have no contact with the victims or witnesses and stay at least 1,000 feet away from Terminal Street. Even more charges may be forthcoming, as police in Madison, Wisconsin, where Nilo attended college, are looking back at their old cases to see if there may be any connection with the suspect. "Our detectives are aware of Matthew Nilo," the police department said in a statement to WCVB. "We are working with Boston police and reviewing old cases to see if there is any connection." Two years after a judge ordered the release of a 911 call that Shannan Gilbert made before she vanished, the Suffolk County Police Department released the full audio Friday. The SCPD also played audio clips as part of a video montage with snippets of residents' 911 calls, as well as maps and other images, showing what authorities believe happened the night that she disappeared, on May 1, 2010. Shannan was a loving daughter, sister, and a young woman who should have had her whole life ahead of her, Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison said at the start of the press conference. Mari Gilbert did not live to witness the arrest of an architect from Long Island suspected of killing four young women whose remains were discovered in Gilgo Beach more than a decade ago. But the search for her daughter Shannan Gilbert, who went missing in May 2010, ultimately led Suffolk County Police to the bodies of those women, wrapped in camouflaged burlap and discarded along a desolate beachfront parkway.
Shannan Gilbert was 23 when she vanished.
Her remains were found in December 2011 in another beach community just down the road. Authorities have said her death may have been accidental and not related to the other killings, a long-dormant multiple homicide case known as the Gilgo Four. Mari Gilbert, in the final years of her life, pressured police to take her daughter's disappearance seriously. She fought tirelessly to ensure that Shannan and the other victims would not be forgotten. Mari saw Shannan as an unintended hero because it was Shannan's disappearance that ironically caused all the others to have been found and, now, to have at least one arrest, said John Ray, an attorney for the Gilbert family. Beyond the string of murders and the long elusive hunt for a suspected serial killer is the Hamlet-like tragedy of a troubled family whose legacy may be helping solve what police called one of the most consequential homicide investigations in the history of Long Island. Who knows what other lives have been saved because of the exposure of all this? And now the arrest of an alleged murderer, Ray said. On July 23, 2016, tragedy again befell the family. Mari Gilbert was 52 when she was stabbed hundreds of times with a 15-inch kitchen knife by another daughter, Sarah. She was then bludgeoned to death with a fire extinguisher, according to a court document. Sarah Gilbert, who Ray said suffered both emotionally and mentally after her sister's death, was sentenced to a prison term of 25 years to life. Mari understood that one way of finding at least a shred of meaning in the loss of her daughter was that her disappearance led to the discovery of those four women several months later, and that without Shannan there would be no case, there would be no search for the killer, said Robert Coker, the author of the 2013 book Lost Girls, an unsolved American mystery, which closely examined the case. She understood that very well, and I believe she found some redemption in that idea, that Shannan's loss helped others learn the truth. Shannan Gilbert's disappearance on May 1, 2010, was followed by years without an arrest, or suspect, or promising leads and, as Coker put it, barely a peep from the police or the authorities. That is until July 13, when police arrested Rex Hoyerman, a 59-year-old architectural consultant who worked in Manhattan and lived with his wife and children in Massapequa Park, across the bay from where the remains of the women were found, on the southeastern edge of Nassau County.
Hoyerman has pleaded not guilty to the murders of Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy and Amber Lynn Costello.
He is also suspected of killing Maureen Brainerd Barnes.
Before the arrest, the Gilgo Beach case remained unsolved for over a decade after the women's bodies were found.
Of all the family members, Mari was the one who got the most out of the police, forced them to do things they otherwise wouldn't, Coker wrote in the new afterword of his book, which was adapted into a 2020 article in New York Magazine. And she didn't just make a lot of noise, the experience of fighting on behalf of her daughter Shannan transformed Mari, too. Mari Gilbert in 2011 accused police of botching the investigation, which she described as clownish.
For years, Gilbert and others maintained that investigators dragged their feet because the victims, like Shannan, were sex workers.
"We kept all the cases alive by keeping alive the Shannan Gilbert case," Ray said. "There's no question of that at all. The police had entered into a dreamland of waiting it out."
A major corruption scandal within Suffolk County law enforcement did not help matters.
In 2015, Suffolk County Police Chief James Burke was arrested and accused of beating a man who allegedly broke into his vehicle in 2012 and stole a bag that contained sex toys and porn, and then conspiring to block the FBI investigation into his actions, according to court records.
Burke ultimately pleaded guilty to a civil rights violation and conspiracy to obstruct justice.
He was sentenced to 46 months in prison, the records show.
Notably, a day after Burke was arrested, the Suffolk County Police Deputy Commissioner at the time announced the FBI would join the investigation into the Gilgo Beach murders.
Coker said Mari Gilbert and the other family members meanwhile banded together to become a powerful force for advocacy. They reminded people that there were real human beings at stake here, that this wasn't just a Hannibal Lecter movie, he said. But among all the family members, Mari was the one who was the most provocative personality. She was the one who, when things started to get quiet, would stand up and make some noise and make sure that the police responded. The day after Hoyerman's arrest, as he left work near the Empire State Building, Gilbert's second eldest daughter, Cher, expressed her support for the families of the victims on a Facebook page titled "Praying for Shannan Maria Gilbert." "The time, effort, and dedication my mom and I put into this case wasn't wasted. I wished, hoped and prayed for this day. I'm glad I'm still alive to see it," she wrote.
Coker, whose book was in 2020 turned into a film for Netflix also titled Lost Girls, said, "I think Mari would have been much the same way if she were here.
She would have celebrated the arrest and voiced support for the other families." In February 2022, Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison formed a multi-agency task force, including state police and the FBI, to revisit the case, an effort that led to Hoyerman's arrest. Within months, investigators made a significant discovery that led them to focus on Hoyerman, according to the prosecution's bail application. Prosecutors said police found a first-generation Chevrolet Avalanche, the same type of truck a witness believed to have been driven by Costello's killer, registered to Hoyerman at the time of the murders.
Investigators later recovered DNA from a pizza crust that was thrown away outside Hoyerman's Manhattan office and linked it to the alleged killer of the Gilgo Four. After the arrest, Harrison defended the police investigation. "Since the discovery of the first victim, there has been a lot of scrutiny and criticism regarding how this investigation was handled," he said. "I will tell you this, the investigators were never discouraged. They continued and uncovered evidence and followed leads. They never stopped working and will continue to work tirelessly until we bring justice to all the families involved." Harrison later told CNN, "There might have been some things that we could have done better, but we're here today and we're announcing that we're placing this animal under arrest." On Friday, Suffolk County authorities announced they had identified another Gilgo Beach murder victim, known as Fire Island Jane Doe, as Karen Vergata, a 34-year-old escort from Manhattan who went missing on Valentine's Day in 1996. Vergata's remains were among nearly a dozen sets of human remains found along Ocean Parkway on the south shore of Long Island between 2010 and 2011, including Shannan Gilbert and the Gilgo Four victims. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney told reporters there are no charges at this time and investigators continue to work on the case. Tierney did not link Hoyerman to Vergata's death.
"It sort of seems like we're on the road to getting answers for some of these deaths," Coker said. "But there are many, many unsolved murders still in Long Island along the shore. There's a glimmer of progress now."
But along with celebrating what's happening, I think a lot of people are asking what took so long.
Early on the morning of May 1, 2010, Gilbert, who lived in New Jersey, traveled with her driver from Manhattan to meet a man at his home in Oak Beach on Long Island. Gilbert appeared irrational at some point and the man contacted the driver, according to a Suffolk County Police online summary of the Gilgo Beach homicide investigation. She fled on foot and approached two homeowners in the area before she vanished.
The driver and the man Gilbert visited that morning were investigated and cleared of criminal involvement in her death, according to police. An analysis by the FBI and a psychiatrist of a 911 call Gilbert made at the time, as well as the circumstances of her disappearance, found that her death was not consistent with her being the victim of violence or of a violent offender, according to Suffolk County Police. In the frantic 911 call, Gilbert screamed, "They're trying to kill me," according to reports. The search for her led to the discovery of the other victims, more than 7 months after Gilbert's disappearance. Gilbert's remains were found in Oak Beach a year later. In 2016, Mari Gilbert and Ray held a news conference to announce that an independent autopsy on Shannan's remains found that her death was consistent with homicidal strangulation, but there was insufficient information to determine a definitive cause of death. Holding a photo of her eldest child, Mari Gilbert told reporters that day, "This is my daughter Shannan. She was not perfect. No one is perfect. But she was loved. She was cared for. She does not deserve to be forgotten." Over the years, Mari Gilbert's daughters often appeared alongside her at news conferences and vigils for the victims. But Ray said daughter Sarah was never the same after Shannan went missing and her remains later discovered. She was driven mad quite substantially by the death of her beloved sister, he said. She looked up to Shannan as, a demigod, and she was broken-hearted by what had happened, and it was all simmering in that little mind all that time. On an afternoon in July 2016, Sarah Gilbert invited her mother to her home. She stabbed Mari Gilbert 227 times, bludgeoned her with a fire extinguisher and sprayed fire extinguisher foam into her mouth, according to a 2021 ruling upholding Sarah's conviction by the New York State Supreme Court, Appellate Division, 3rd Judicial Department. Cher Gilbert wrote on Facebook, "So as a lot of you may know, my mother passed away yesterday. She was murdered by my sister, Sarah, who was battling a mental illness for 2.5 years. My sister Stevie and I are incredibly devastated beyond words, as our mother was the backbone of the family." Police responded to a call from one of Sarah's sisters. Outside the home, Cher Gilbert told officers that Sarah called her that morning and told her that she was hearing voices, the document said. Inside, police found Mari Gilbert's body and Sarah smoking a cigarette. In body camera footage played for the jury at trial, Sarah told police in a soft voice, "I killed my mom," though she later said Gilbert was still alive. Sarah told police that before the killing she heard voices referring to her mother as the devil and a bad god and directing her to kill Gilbert. Mari loved her daughter, Ray said. She went to her death, knowing when she was going to that house that she was in danger. Sarah's younger sister, Stevie Smith, testified for the prosecution at trial, saying that Sarah had a strained relationship with the victim, who had obtained custody of defendant's son following a February 2016 incident in which defendant drowned a puppy in front of the child, the document said. The prosecution maintained that Sarah plotted the killing after her mother had Sarah arrested months earlier for killing the puppy. The defense argued that Sarah harbored delusions fueled by years of abuse and mental illness. A forensic psychologist testified for the defense that Sarah suffered from acute symptoms of schizophrenia at the time of the killing. "We have no doubt that defendant suffers from a debilitating mental illness that blurs the lines of fiction and reality, and we are certainly sympathetic to the difficult life circumstances she has endured," the ruling said. The proof, however, reasonably supports the jury's finding that, at the time of the killing, defendant had the substantial capacity to know and appreciate both the nature and consequences of her conduct and that such conduct was wrong. Coker, in the 2020 afterword to his best-selling book, wrote, "Mari's life, transformed by the death of one daughter, had been ended by another. She was not a perfect person and she was a confrontational person," Coker said in an interview. But in her final years, she became the caregiver for another sick daughter of hers. And her tragic death was awful. But everyone I talked to who knew her well said that in her final years she had grown as a person and really found a way to keep on living despite such terrible loss. A 70-year-old cold case has been closed thanks to DNA testing through the family history site Ancestry.com. "It's probably one of the biggest highlights of my life, to be able to tell people like Floyd and Mary that we've closed the case," said Detective Stephanie Mickham of the LaGrange County Sheriff's Office. Floyd and Mary are two of the surviving children of Ralph Stutzman, a LaGrange County farmer, who went missing August 17, 1952.
They attended a public announcement at the LCSD Friday afternoon to officially close their father's cold case, along with nearly 20 family members and friends, as well as many more living in Florida they didn't know they had, who participated via Zoom.
On August 17, 1952, Ralph Stutzman was reported missing from his home in LaGrange County. Family was inside the house and Mr. Stutzman was believed to be in the barn, and he just kind of disappeared at that time, Mickham said. Stutzman was 47 years old, with a wife, 12 surviving children and 1 deceased, and a farm, when he went missing. In April 2022, genealogist Randy Davis was contacted by a relative who was trying to locate her parents. She had used Ancestry DNA's testing platform and found a match to a group of Stutzmans in LaGrange and also the Schrocks in Florida. On September 27, 2022, he contacted the LaGrange County Sheriff's Office and told them he believed they had solved a missing persons case from 70 years prior. The woman, Crystal, believed that she came from the lineage of Ralph Stutzman, who went missing in LaGrange County in 1952, but her DNA showed that her grandfather was in fact the father of a woman named Ruth in Ocala, Florida, who was known as Delbert Schrock, because the DNA was a match. The department requested that Stutzman's daughter Mary also submit her DNA. It created the direct link to Ruth Hackney, which would have been Mary Stutzman Boyd's sister, Mickham explained. It was determined that at some point, Ralph Stutzman had moved to Florida and was going by the name of Delbert Schrock. There, he developed a second family, producing 6 more children, and died in 1968 in Florida, and that family was none the wiser that their patriarch was a missing person until they were contacted. It kind of threw me for a loop because I wasn't aware of anything like that, said John Schrock, a grandson living in Florida. It's kind of weird because my family growing up, as big as it is down here, it's even bigger up there, so one day I'd like to be able to meet everybody. At 92, Mary Stutzman Boyd is still alive, but suffering from memory issues, and her son Ben Boyd, another grandson of Stutzman, said he's not sure if his mother will fully understand what's transpired, but other members of the family most certainly do. For years and years, she always said that she would like to know what happened to her dad before she died, Boyd said. I think for the whole family it's just a relief to know what really happened to him, and he's not laying in some ditch somewhere and deteriorating away. Boyd remembers the rumors going around in the 50s when Stutzman originally came up missing, but he was only 5 years old, so he didn't understand a lot of what was happening. Instead, Stutzman remembers playing with his youngest uncle Don, who was just 9 months older than him. The family still doesn't have any idea why Stutzman left, but they are nevertheless already developing relationships, and talks of a family reunion are in the works. Those talks even continued on during the press conference as Stutzman's son Floyd Fuzz Stutzman heard his nephew John Schrock, Ocala, speak for the first time via Zoom. Everybody that was involved in this, we can't thank them enough, Boyd said. Just a great big thank you to the Sheriff's Department and Detective Stephanie Mickham. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe and like the video, and click the bell icon to stay tuned.